If you don't know what the Real Friends of WeHo is, then congratulations. You are not terminally online, and you may want to skip this video, but if you're interested in the drama and the kerfuffle that has been surrounding MTV's newest unscripted reality show, then boy, have I got a deep dive for you today. And I'll spare you a watch by giving you all of the details that you need to know about this cast of motley gays who live in West Hollywood and are apparently terrorizing the nation of RuPaul's Drag Race with the mere existence of their unscripted reality show. So the premise of the Real Friends of WeHo is essentially like a gay ripoff of the Real Housewives on the Bravo network that MTV, I think, has essentially pilfered and copied and tried to apply to a new community that has been unyet explored in this specific kind of way. Now, I will be getting into the particulars of representation and the gay community that seems to be batted around by certain cast members on this show a lot, but the premise of this show basically is like rich gays fighting, being friends, and showing off their opulent, lavish lifestyles. So the show debuted to overwhelmingly negative feedback, and partly because of the programming decisions that MTV made while creating this show in the first place. People are generally roasting it because they are mad that it is disrupting the originally scheduled program of RuPaul's Drag Race. MTV cut down Drag Race's premiere episodes from 90 minutes to 60 minutes in order to make way and make space for this TV show. And what I think MTV was trying to do was capture some of the RuPaul's Drag Race audience and translate it and bring it over into this new unscripted reality show about gays in West Hollywood, the gay epicenter of Los Angeles. But I think that they kind of miscalculated their move here, because if you want to bring the existing audience of a show you already have on board with a new show, why would you deprive them of the hero content that they are tuned in for? And it's not like RuPaul's Drag Race is some like passing fad or trend. Like, it truly is a cultural phenomenon with legions of fans that have come to expect a very specific thing. And if you disrupt the knowers and lovers of a specific TV show and try and redivert their attention to something that they never really asked for in the first place, I really don't know how you can expect that to go down well. And it went down like a bag of sick. That was only kind of like one part of the controversy that was started with this new reality television show. The cast of the show is honestly a mess, and we're gonna get into exactly all who the cast members are, but Todrick Hall is, you know, the man, the myth, the legend of being a nightmare, of not paying his rent, allegedly, and of not paying the people that work for him. He is kind of a documented bad person in that sense. He's not very pleasant to work with, and he has an extremely unpleasant personality. Like, I just don't know how else to say it. He is a very unlikable person, not even in a way that makes him captivating to watch. So I think he was kind of miscast on this show, and this show never had a chance with the current programming schedule that it's on, plus the inclusion of one of the internet's most annoying personalities. Some of you may be familiar with Todrick Hall from the Taylor Swift cinematic universe. She roped him in during the Lover era to, I guess, diversify, wokeify, shall we say, her friend circle. And I mean, when you're taking consultation from Todrick Hall on how best to, I don't know, understand and explore communities and issues that maybe you didn't know much about before, that kind of says a little bit to me about your worldview, girly. So we're just gonna pretend that Taylor Swift and Todrick Hall don't know each other for the purposes of this video. And Todrick Hall, it seems to me, is also pretending that he doesn't know Taylor Swift. And I know that it's on the tip of his tongue. He wants to say, Taylor Swift's my best friend, Taylor Swift's my best friend. But I would say that Tree Payne or Taylor sent him a very specific text before he started filming for this unscripted reality show and said, please, you know, keep my name out your mouth, which is tea. So as I mentioned, Drag Race viewers really voted with their feet on this. In fact, they ended up boycotting the show because they were so upset about the disruption to the original programming that they signed up for. And the Real Friends of West Hollywood ended up losing 71% of their lead-in audience. The Real Friends of West Hollywood premieres right after Drag Race. So the idea, again, was to get that lead-in audience, but people are so mad that they are switching it off. And a video went viral of a gay bar switching off the premiere episode after Drag Race premiered as part of this boycott effort, and Todrick Hall lost his damn mind. Now, if you don't want to hear more about the Todrick Hall drama, I'm going to leave a timestamp here, and you can get straight into my recap and everything that you need to know about the Real Housewives of WeHo. So go there if you don't want to hear the drama. So like I said, Todrick Hall is like the worst Taylor Swift friend-making decision since Karlie Kloss or befriending Kanye West after all of their beef. There is no reason why her wagon should be hitched to this shit show. And I think that his lashing out and response to the criticism that the Real Friends of WeHo was receiving is a really good example of how having someone that's volatile like this is not great for your image if you are a celebrity trying to use other celebrities to bolster your public credentials. Todrick really is an internet star in the sense that he cannot let an accusation, a drama, a mishap, or a comment or critique about him go by without jumping on it and attacking whoever said it. And I swear to God, he does not have a publicist, because the stuff that he says in response while trying to like clear his name or to explain himself really end up shooting him in the foot and making him look worse. So again, let's revisit the reason why the gays were boycotting this show. It was because it was disrupting a program that they already knew and love, and it was featuring a bunch of people that they don't know and have no reason to care about. Todrick Hall was a guest judge on Drag Race for a number of years, but I believe that his tenure on the show didn't go down very well. People weren't really happy to see him in a show that followed right afterwards because they didn't like him on the original show to begin with. So when Todrick responds or lashes out in these kind of like extravagant ways, one of his favorite things to do is to invoke representation and racism and homophobia whenever he is questioned or pulled up on anything as a way to kind of deflect from whatever the criticism that is being lobbed at him is. And you know, I don't want to take away from anyone's personal experiences. I'm sure Todrick has experienced plenty of homophobia and racism, but this specific instance is a really good example of how people can take kind of like woke and identity politics language and mangle it and use it to defend themselves when really they should probably not be saying anything at all. So when Todrick heard of the backlash to the show, he posted a screed, a handwritten letter, onto his Instagram story, and I'm just going to read it for you so we can go through it together. After last night's premiere of The Real Friends of WeHo, I saw a lot of comments saying we don't want to see a bunch of rich, fit, entitled, privileged gay men, which begs the question, why are we thrilled to watch rich Kardashians or Real Housewives, but we only want to watch gays be underdogs, not well-offs, not too confident? Let's get into the weeds, real talk. There's a video out now from last night going semi-viral from a local gay club turning off our show and the crowd rejoicing and cheering as if they just turned Trump off. A black actor is telling his incredible story of coming out, and people are rooting and praying for it to fail. There are very real issues happening for gay and trans people right now, and we are literally fighting ourselves. Could our ensemble of 6 be more diverse? Absolutely, but this points to a bigger issue. There isn't a large pool of gay celebs to begin with. They'd need to live in LA, be available, and have the time and the desire to do the show. But why don't we hold the Real Housewives to this standard? Is there even one city in that franchise that is as diverse as our cast from its giant pool of women it can choose from? Then he decides to end it with what he thinks is a slam dunk, but is like truly a humiliating inclusion that, if anything, just goes to like disprove the point he's trying to make. Fun fact, the average annual earnings for gay men in the United States is $59,618 compared to $57,032 for straight men. We are successful, we work hard, and we deserve to see ourselves thriving on TV. So it's such an easy and pathetic cop-out whenever somebody validly tries to critique a piece of gay media that's in the public domain to say that you are not allowed to critique it, you are not allowed to say anything bad about it, and you better support it just because it includes gay people. I don't claim or associate with every gay person. It is a really kind of silly identity to organize yourselves around because it truly is kind of like a non-factor. To me, it is like a biological fact that does not unite me or bring me together with other people in any sort of community. And it's also too broad and too many people for it to really be considered a community. What do I have in common with Milo Yiannopoulos and George Santos, who are also gay? We literally would never sit down at a dinner table and have a conversation or support each other or lift each other up in our endeavors. It is not necessary that you be in community with every single gay person that you see. And you also don't need to support or get behind every single gay person that's on television simply because they have not been on television before. It doesn't really make sense to me to tout that argument around, especially when you are accompanying it with the glorification of money and being rich and hustle culture. We are very quick to critique and analyze these things. The Real Housewives and the Kardashians are fair targets constantly for the excessive displays of like lavishness and overconsumption. I see public critiques of them all the time. If anything, I would say women in the reality television arena are subject to a disproportionate amount of misogynistic abuse, and to kind of try and suggest that the Real Friends of WeHo, this flop show with 100,000 viewers, is undergoing any sort of similar kind of comparison, let alone that they have it harder than the people who have been on reality television for years, is kind of myopic and also not truthful. We only want to watch gays be underdogs and not too confident, says Todrick. Literally everything he says in this letter is disproven by the fact that Drag Race is one of the most successful shows and also is the prelude to his current show. Queer Eye is another really famous and popular reality television show that is about like lifting men up. I don't really see that argument of insisting that we always want to see the gays as the underdogs. If those are the kinds of stories that are being told in fictional media and scripted content, then that is kind of like a market-based response to demand, right? Like a lot of people have that experience. Being gay is like not an entirely entirely normalized identity in many places yet. So, of course, we're still going to have those narratives lingering around. And also, as I mentioned, it is a broad experience. It is certainly not a community, and one person's story can not speak for every single experience that exists on this world, and nor should it. We shouldn't apply that pressure onto the pieces of media that we consume. Gay media has effectively been very well mainstreamed, and I think that any sort of show or actor or television endeavor that includes gay people is up for a fair amount of critique, just like everything else out there. We're not really at the point where we have to be gatekeeping and safeguarding our very precious small pieces of gay media. There's quite a lot of it out there. And he keeps mentioning The Real Housewives, which is interesting because this format is straight up jacked from The Real Housewives, and all of the cast members are emulating the various housewife archetypes to some extent throughout this first episode. So I think that it's interesting to say that The Real Housewives are not held up to the same standards of accountability. The reason why Todrick is being held to a different level of accountability than other people is because people have pre-existing notions of him and they don't like him. And unfortunately, that is kind of out of your control. It is not a wider symptom of societal ill. In fact, I didn't even really see much criticism of any of the other cast members involved in this. Todrick is again using this as a way to kind of deflect the personal criticisms and rope other people into something that really is more about him than anyone else. And then he ends with the humiliating, what he thinks is a slam dunk, of saying gays earn more money than everyone else. So isn't your argument that we're some sort of repressed minority that really truly needs to be exposed for being these amazing winners that never have the chance to be so successful? If that is true, then why are gay men richer than straight men? Doesn't really make any sense, does it? And also, the idea that gay people should just be represented because they are rich and because they are making a lot of money is an extremely reductive and shallow representation of any person in this world. I think we have enough media that glorifies wealth. It's not necessary that there is a gay equivalent to The Real Housewives. If there is one, I mean, sure, if that's someone's cup of tea, then enjoy. But I don't like the insistence that this is doing some sort of social work by introducing a show like this to the mainstream. There are plenty of other shows that I think address being gay and the experience of that in a more interesting and diverse way than what is going on this show. And it's yes, the show might be racially diverse, but it is not economically diverse. And that is, for me, not a problem in reality television, because this is the other kind of part of it, right? Reality television is supposed to be aspirational. It's supposed to be silly. It's supposed to be camp. It's supposed to take you out of your day-to-day experience and allow you to kind of project away into a different realm with all of this cast of ridiculous characters who live their lives in a way you could never imagine, right? That's the purpose of it. So to a certain extent, I can understand why he's saying the gays need to have that space as well. And that kind of brings me to my next point, which is that I am a reality television head. I am a scholar. I love reality TV, especially The Real Housewives. And I think that this is an extremely interesting show for me to go through because it is so closely following that Housewives model. And listen, I was surprised that this show is far more enjoyable than I thought that it was going to be. It is silly, it is contrived, it is set up and ludicrous in the exact same way that The Real Housewives is. For a first episode, it can be hard for a cast to warm up and to get invested in people. For a first episode, this was actually pretty interesting. And the weakest links in this scenario are Todrick and another guy called James, who is really truly a nothing person that adds nothing to the show. But Todrick is I think he was trying to pitch himself as the drama starter, the famous one, and he just kind of flops throughout the episode. And you know what? We love to see it. So I'm looking forward to season 2 with Todrick Hall not being on the cast anymore. I do think in general this show has the potential to be good, and that MTV really kind of messed it up by screwing with the original Drag Race programming in order to get this on the air. And the casting choice of casting Todrick was a really stupid thing to do, and actually is addressed throughout the first episode. And his cast members do seem to keep him at a bit of an arm's length, and who can be surprised? He is known for not being very kind to his colleagues. Todrick is also all bark and no bite. He adds nothing in the way of conflict or any sort of interesting dramatic personality to the show. I thought that at the very least he could be a good villain, but he doesn't really seem to have the verve to do that. He just has this compulsive need to clear his name and also to insist that everybody pay attention to him because he is gay and a self-funded artist. I mean, okay, I suppose so, but there are much more interesting characters on the show that we are about to get into. And there definitely is something interesting in general about the culture and the scene that they're trying to break into and explore here. The rich, kind of aesthetically homogenous version of gayness that exists in West Hollywood, even though they are all different and they come from different diverse backgrounds, they kind of conform to a shared idea of what it means to be a gay person in Los Angeles, which is going to be very interesting to watch unfold as this season continues. continues. But what's a shame is that I think that this show is not going to get renewed for a second season because of the ratings. The ratings suck because the Drag Race viewers are boycotting it and refusing to tune in. And, that sucks because it had the potential, I think, to actually be kind of an entertaining show. What I don't really like is how they are really trying to market this show as like a woke endeavor. It's like a social justice enterprise. And why can't we just have gays being messy on reality TV and leave it at that? Why do we have to rope like morality into it? Can't we just let gays be bad people? That's true representation, right? Like letting people be absolute fucking messes and assholes on television without paying attention to their identity. So let's meet the cast of The Real Friends of WeHo. The first person that we meet is Brad Goreski, and I think that he is kind of like our focal point, our host, our nice person who is actually a very essential character in a reality television ensemble cast. He is kind of the connective tissue between each and every cast member, and I can see that he's going to be taking on a bit of a mediator role, trying to help people solve their problems while also giving a kind of like light comedic effect. He has an extremely annoying voice, but otherwise he seems like a very well-intentioned older gay person as well. Some age diversity representation here, kind of cool to see. He's in his 50s. I believe he is married to his husband. They live in West Hollywood. He was a celebrity stylist, or still is, I think. And I mean, celebrity stylist when your main client is Sarah Hyland, I don't know.
I'm still styling. I have a great roster of amazing ladies like Kaylee Cuoco, Demi Moore, Sarah Hyland.
This is another funny thing that I found kept coming to me throughout this show is how bizarrely all of these people insist that they are like these big celebrities, stars, names that everybody knows, and they have these big reputations, and it's like the only person that was really known to this internet audience before this show premiered was Todrick, and it was not for the right reasons, but there are certainly other characters on the show that are extremely delusional about their own reputations. Brad is not really one of them. I can see he does make some comments throughout the show that makes me think that he might just regret doing it a little bit. He is friends with Todrick, I believe, before they start shooting the show, or acquaintances, because when they go to see each other, it's a little stilted. Todrick's being very friendly, but you can tell that Brad is like kind of keeping him at an arm's length, and that is a smart thing to do.
It's so good to see you.
Todrick was one of the people that when I kind of said his name, people were like, do not. I was just told Todrick is messy.
Then we have Curtis Hamilton, who is perhaps the most compelling character on this show. I think he's really going to serve as the protagonist, and he is the only kind of cast member that is working through a real issue on TV. And this issue is that he hasn't really come out yet. He is a successful actor. He starred in the movie Surviving Compton, played Dr. Dre, and he was also on Issa Rae's brilliant HBO show Insecure. She does him a real solid by showing up to film the first episode, and they have this interesting conversation about why he hasn't come out yet and what his fears are in terms of coming out, and will he still be able to get leading man roles, and will people look at him any differently as an actor. Issa Rae also has kind of an interesting take on him doing this reality television program, and she kind of subtly hints to him that if he is to become more of a reality personality, that is going to make him harder to cast than him being gay.
If you're more famous as a personality, that's the only concern that I would have.
I think there is some sort of like mark that gets put on you when you do reality television in Hollywood because it is not perceived as a serious endeavor. And that's something that I don't think Curtis really like contended with before he started doing the show. And the overwhelming sense that I get from him is that he's like too normal and too sweet to be on reality television. But he is very candid about the fact that he's scared to come out, and he's scared that he's going to let down his family.
I'm scared. Scared as hell.
That storyline, I can tell, is going to be the interesting kind of heartbeat of the show, because the rest of it is like silly nonsense, and this is the one kind of real animating thread. Then we meet Todrick. He is at his home rehearsing some hideous dance routine with a bunch of other West Hollywood gays that were not lucky enough to be cast on the show.
Yes, boys.
Brad comes over to see Todrick, and Todrick's kind of like instant narrative straight off the bat is, they love to tear me apart. It's really hard for me out here, and I just have to keep focus on what I'm doing and not pay attention to the haters. And he starts talking about how much he loves his fans, right? And this is one of my questions that I have. It's like, who are Todrick Hall's fans? Like, who are the stans of him? What does he do? He makes like mean girl skits and horrible songs that don't really seem to be played on the radio or like sold in any sort of public forum. So I'm a little confused as to like what exactly his fan base is. I think he's just one of those people that's been on the internet for so long that people just know who he is and follow him. I wouldn't say that he has fans, but he starts talking about how much his fans mean to him and how they send him these beautiful messages of support in this trying time of when he was getting canceled for not paying for his house. And the example that they put up on screen to show that he has these amazing fans is someone writing, "Merry Christmas."
It's a witch hunt out here sometimes. So grateful that I had incredible fans. It's been those moments when people have reached out to me and
Not, "I love you," not "keep going," not "your work inspires me so much." Merry Christmas. The producers got him. They got him. Smack cam, live on air. He says that it's a witch hunt out here and that he's really just doing his best to keep his head above water after being exposed for not paying his rent. This is a confusing allegation that came out, I think, last year, that he did this whole house tour at this house in LA and then was accused. He said that he owned it and then he was accused of not paying $100,000 in rent. Later on in this episode, he shows the deed to the house, but like, I'm still not clear on whether he owns this house or like needs to pay the back rent. He didn't explain it at all. He just brought the deed and was like, "It's my house, period." He didn't really like say, he didn't get into the nuts and bolts of disproving this, right? He just kind of threw a piece of paper around and like didn't show it properly to the camera. So I'm suspicious of that. I really do not trust anything this man says. He does say something kind of interesting about like the rumors and the online life of being an influencer, in that he said that his favorite recording artists can just move and operate how they want to and just do their art and not really have to engage with the public backlash that surrounds them. Taylor Swift is, I think, who he wanted to mention here. But he said that because his career and his fandom was born of the internet, that he has to respond to these things.
I tried to move like my favorite recording artists, but I think that ultimately my fan base are people who found me on YouTube.
And it's like, that is, I suppose, an interesting thing, because Todrick really wants to be a traditional celebrity. Like, he wants to make albums, he wants to make music videos. I would guess that he would love to be in a real TV show playing an acted role, but I think that those avenues are just not accessible to him because he's not that talented. Like, there's just not that much to Todrick other than the extremely stereotypical gay performance that he does. And I don't say that in a derogatory way. I just mean to say that Todrick is like the McDonald's of gayness, right? Like, it's a gayness that we are familiar with and that we see represented in the media a lot. And it is something that is a little caricaturish. It's not 100% taken seriously. It can be very commercial, but people don't really perceive what Todrick does as art. And he keeps talking about how he hopes that people see him for who he really is. And you know what? Be careful what you wish for. Be careful what you wish for. And we meet James Bond, who is like truly a nothing person. And this is really funny to me because his whole backstory was like really, I think the producers and him were both kind of trying to figure out a way to justify his inclusion in this. So he refers to himself as a super host. And a super host, according to him, is someone that like goes onto red carpets and talks to every celebrity, goes to every award show.
I've been hosting celebrity news for almost 10 years.
So to me, a super host, if this is the definition we're going for, is someone like Ryan Seacrest. It's someone like Juliana Rancic. It's someone like Joan Rivers with Fashion Police. It's people that you like see and recognize. I have never seen this man in my life, and I guarantee that you haven't either. Maybe he hosted like Entertainment Tonight's like B-list, C-list, red carpet off-ramp moment, you know, where people are leaving the red carpets and they like walk by and someone asks, "Who are you wearing?" And they just shout at the mic in the general direction and don't stop and say hello. Maybe that's what he's been doing. But his other claim to fame is that he's married to a huge celebrity. And can you guess who the huge celebrity is? No, you can't, because it's not a huge celebrity. It's Jonathan Bennett, also known as Aaron from Mean Girls.
But there's no way in the world y'all would have had me on this show if I wasn't married to Jonathan Bennett. Y'all asked him first and he said no.
So he is literally purported to be this huge, massive blockbuster Hollywood star, which is hilarious to me because he has not been in a super commercially successful project since Mean Girls in 2004. So billing him as like the George Clooney of this series is hilarious to me, but also maybe kind of sad and true in that like the caliber and the level of the cast, the success that they've reached in terms of like penetrating the public mindset is really quite low. So I guess that Jonathan Bennett is George Clooney in this scenario. It seems that he has like put his hosting on pause. I don't understand why he wouldn't just continue with that because he has nothing else going on other than filming this show and his failed travel company, which is called Outbound. And he doesn't say like what it is, what it does. It's just like Outbound. It's my travel company. And he vaguely like hints at it not being very successful and him also being like, well, I hope it turns around sometime soon, without explaining what it is, without explaining why it hasn't been successful. I mean, it's too good. A lot of the people in this series are fronting severely. I would love to get Megan King Edmonds from The Real Housewives of Orange County onto this cast to investigate who's telling the truth about what exactly they have or don't have and where they have not made their accomplishments. So Todrick to me is kind of like the jester. So people laugh at him. He's there for comedic effect. He's there to wear like stupid outfits and contribute nothing to conversations. James Vaughn is nothing. I guess he could kind of be eye candy. He's good looking, but like that truly is like that's all that there is to him. And then we have our villain, Dorian Renault, who is another extremely delusional person on this cast. And he seemed to have more Instagram followers than the influencer that he gets into a beef with for being an influencer. And it would be interesting to do a followers audit and see exactly how many of these people have bought their followers. I actually should do that now that I think about it. So Dorian is an entrepreneur. He is the founder of Buddha Skin, which is a skincare company for melanated people. I think that's how he is marketing it. And it is successful. It has like 100,000 followers on Instagram. It seems to be sold in a couple of different stores, but it's certainly not global, and it's certainly not Estee Lauder. It's not even Glossier. You know, it's not a widely successful beauty company. He's not Jeff Bezos, okay? He refers to himself as an entrepreneur, and that he is, but his inflated sense of how big of a deal he is in comparison to how big of a deal his business is, which is not that big, is kind of wild.
When I'm in the streets, paparazzi are taking pictures.
Why would the paparazzi take a picture of someone that doesn't exist in the public imagination? Like, you are a nobody. So why are they taking pictures of you unless you paid them or called them and begged them to come? The paparazzi are not waiting for Dorian Renault on his doorstep, okay? A picture of him is gonna sell to People magazine for maybe 50 cents at this point. Now, before the show, it probably wouldn't even sell at all. So I don't know where these paparazzi are coming from, why they want to photograph him. He doesn't really make any sort of wider allusions to who his like fabulous circle and network of friends is. If anything, he comes off as kind of like a lone wolf. And he also has a really kind of gross superiority complex. He says that he's worried about the cast of this show not being in his tax bracket.
The only concerns that I have about doing this show is that somebody else on here is not, I won't say in my tax bracket, but in my taste bracket.
You know what? His taste is exactly the same as every single other person on the show. They like shiny things, they like tight-fitting clothes, they like pastel colors, they like to wear sequins and glitter. I mean, he is really not on a different kind of plane of existence to his fellow cast members, though he clearly thinks that he is above them somehow. If anybody in this scenario is too good to be there, it is Curtis Hamilton. So Dorian is involved in our second kind of like group meeting where we see the cast members interacting with each other. First, we had Brad and Todrick meeting at Todrick's house to discuss Todrick's cancellation. And now we have Dorian and Brad. And now we have Brad, the connector, the mediator, meeting with Dorian and offering to style him. Then we meet Joey Zauzig.
I'm promiscuous Joey, I'm also sex Joey, I'm also loving Joey, I'm also big-hearted Joey, I'm also big Joey.
Whose voice sounds like Yzma from The Emperor's New Groove. I'm an influencer. He sounds like he takes a lot of Adderall and smokes a pack of cigarettes a day. Like, the energy of this person is so much to deal with, and his voice is so awful to listen to, but he is an extremely captivating character for reality TV because, like Dorian, his delusional levels are just kind of like off the charts. So he is an influencer, and he wants to tell us this over and over again. He's like explaining what an influencer is. He's very defensive about being an influencer. He wants everyone to know that it's a real job and that he works hard. And it's like, in the year 2023, on reality television, we know what an influencer is.
I am an influencer.
My skin's popping, my career's popping, my money is popping. I'm the employee of LA.
We also know that it's not that hard work. Not that it's not work at all, but it's not like manual labor. It's also not comparable to being an actor or being an entrepreneur. You know, those are things that you have to have like a skill set for, and his influencing career is not based around any sort of skill. It is based around feeling good. He said that his platform is very inspiring. I think it gives those kind of like banal speeches of being like, yes, girl, you go, you are worth $1 million, don't settle for less. And then that gets like 50,000 likes because, I don't know, it's so banal that it appeals to basically anyone that encounters it. I think that's his thing. I haven't really done a deep dive into his socials, but he is not a star, shall we say. Like, there's no reason why he's an influencer, and his statistics that he's using to back up his influencerdom is not very good either. He has like 200,000 followers on Instagram, and he lets it slip later in the episode that he basically doesn't really make that much money from being an influencer, that his husband, or his husband-to-be, his fiance, is kind of supporting them financially, and that he gets good brand deals from time to time. I mean, you know, when we're talking about like influencers with 200K, they are kind of like mid-level high-level influencers, right, they're not going to be commanding the James Charles salaries. If you have millions and millions of followers, then we're talking like high levels of earning potential. But when you're at that mid-level, like it's such a crowded space now that it doesn't really mean much to have 200,000 followers in 2023 in Los Angeles. So Todrick comes to meet Joey at the gym, and Todrick shows up with a pizza and a milkshake because he's just so relatable and wants to eat all the junk food and gossip about boys with Joey, which is, I think, exactly what they do. Todrick basically calls Joey a snake. And this is something else that is so perplexing to me about this series, is that some of these men seem to like not only not know each other, but genuinely dislike each other when they meet for the first time.
I'd rather be friends with somebody who I know what they are from the beginning. If Joey is a snake, he's probably a loyal one.
And then they have to pretend as though they are a circle of friends and that they are invested in each other's well-being. And even when they fight and have conflict, it's completely manufactured, because none of these people, except for maybe Brad and Todrick and Brad and Dorian tangentially, have any sort of direct relationship. And that is kind of the kiss of death for a reality television show, is if the organic relationships are not there, then it comes across as forced and it comes across as inauthentic. And there is a performance element to all forms of reality television, but it can become too overproduced. And I think that the real friends of WeHo may veer into that in the subsequent episodes, but I've only watched one, so I'll reserve my judgments for now. Todrick calls him a snake and says that he would rather keep his snakes closer than far away. And I don't really know what kind of power a 200,000 follower snake can have, but apparently people are scared of Joey. Maybe it's just his gravelly voice and the fact that he's always smoking cigarettes. I mean, maybe that's what it is that's scary about him. You know, at least the first part of making it is faking it. So I guess he's really, really nailing the faking it part of fake it till you make it. He met his fiance at Barry's boot camp, which is, I mean, it's very stereotypical. I don't know what else to say. You're a gay living in Los Angeles and you attend Barry's boot camp. I mean, it makes sense to me. But yeah, he also says that people have big conceptions of who he is and really seem to have a stick up his ass about being an influencer. And he feels insecure about not having a real job. That is, I think, what the deep down insecurity projection, the lashing out, the I'm so fabulous, look at my life, look at how much money I make, look how successful I am. It comes from a place of like truly knowing that it doesn't mean anything. And that's unfortunate because you can see it kind of playing out in his brain as he tries to like really viciously defend himself, that even he is not really convinced by his reasonings for why he is the greatest, most successful influencer of all time.
People have such big misconceptions about who I am, and they think my whole persona online is fake, and they're talking about my fiance, talking about my house, talking about my money. People start picking out things that I'm insecure about. People talk about my skin, or people talk about my weight. You know, it hurts.
So the first cast event is actually being hosted by Joey. It is an engagement party for him and his fiance at his house. He goes back to his house to plan the party with his fiance, who is, to be fair, a snack.
I have an amazing fiance. We've been engaged for a little bit over a year.
The theme of the party originally was like the Beverly Hills Hotel, the Chateau Marmont, which like totally makes sense. That's very in line with what they are. And Joey goes, no. I need something that represents who we are.
I don't know about Chateau though, because we've like done that before. Like, let's make it like us.
Who we are, he says. And I want it to be 1940s themed.
Like 1940s, old Hollywood.
And I think what he means is that he wants like a roaring 20s party, because every reality television star wants that. But he says the 1940s, and I think like I'm trying to conjure in my mind what was glamorous about the 1940s, and the answer is like truly not much. It was like wartime, and that was not the theme of the party. So I think he really like is confused with his decade references, and he says that he wants this old school glamour because that's so him and his fiance, while he's wearing a white fringe blazer. So, yeah. And he ends this party planning debacle by saying,
nothing can go wrong. It's important that people know I'm here, I've arrived, I've really made it.
And, you know, I think that everybody's bandwidth for tolerating the aggrieved rantings and ravings of someone who stands in front of a ring light all day and talks about skincare is going to be very, very low. Then we cut to a scene with Dorian and Curtis, who actually seem to also have an off-camera friendship that is interesting, and they seem like the only natural friends on the show. Even though Brad and Todrick like know each other, these guys seem to actually have some sort of connection and like genuine care for one another, and they do talk about how Curtis is scared to come out to his family.
I hope that I don't break my mama's heart. You are like the all-American, nice, good black boy. What else is there for them to make an opinion on?
Dorian does not actually strike me as someone who has fully come to terms with who he is at all yet, because there's a lot of projection going on. There's a lot of like, I think that everyone else is garbage and you're not in my tax bracket, you're below me, you're beneath me. And this translates to when he gets invited to Joey's engagement party. He is super quick to be like, I think that influencers are garbage. I think that you are basically unemployed and I don't respect you because you don't do anything.
What does this guy do?
He's an influencer, so.
No, an influencer, unemployed.
That's not a job.
It is a really strong and intense reaction to have to someone that you've never met before. And of course, as I said, there is an element of performance. This is reality television. Like, they do need to manufacture some sort of conflict. Dorian has a really bad attitude, an overinflated sense of self, and deep insecurities, which makes him a wonderful character for reality television. And we unfortunately get another scene with Todrick where he goes on Bob the Drag Queen and Monet, I think another drag queen's podcast, and they are talking about the whole house debacle. And I think that this was deliberately constructed to give Todrick the opportunity to explain himself. He brings out the deed to his house, and the other hosts of the podcast are trying to ask him questions about it, and he really does like kind of skirt around the exact issue and doesn't explain why there was some sort of misconception in the first place. I don't get how there can be confusion over whether you own a house or not. Like, either you have the deed and the title to the house or you don't have it. And if a company is like suing you in a court of law for rent money, I would feel that you could shut that down really quickly if you just had the deed to your house, right? It's not like he was sued for not paying his mortgage, he was sued for not paying his rent. Then he also talks about another public blunder that he had last year. He was on the cast of Celebrity Big Brother, and people just didn't like him. Again, it was nothing like that he was getting canceled for. People just thought that he was mean and nasty and rude and deceitful. And that's kind of the name of the game, but also like, I think the Big Brother fans have like a code of conduct where they want people to play a good game, like an honest game. And they think that Todrick did not play an honest game. So much so that his own castmates blocked him from winning the show, and his response to all of that criticism is,
I didn't really care. I felt proud about the game that I played, and I still made $200,000 playing that game for the month.
so pay your rent. So pay your rent. Then he tried to explain the allegations that he doesn't pay his employees by saying that he put out a casting call for one of his videos that explicitly said it was a non-paying exposure job. And you know what? He justifies that by saying that he's a self-funded artist and that he has big dreams and he needs to achieve the kind of recording artist, label artist level of quality by himself. And again, I think he's engaging in a very specific kind of manipulative deflection where he is trying to say that he deserves just to put out this kind of work without having to pay people, only because he doesn't have the backing of a label behind him. And that doesn't really make sense to me, because if you can't afford it, then you shouldn't be doing it. If you can't afford to pay people for the work that they do, even if they agree to do it, these exposure related jobs are really BS, and they hurt the creative industry. They hurt creatives that are trying to get their break. And also, getting to be in a Todrick Hall music video, I'm sorry, babes, who are you being exposed to? Like 50,000 people on YouTube? I mean, I don't think that's worth a full day of physical labor. Like, these are dancers. These are people that are doing routines and getting in costume and taking time out of their day where they could be doing a paying job to do this for you instead. And I just don't think that that is acceptable to do, even if people agree to it. I think it's a little unethical and it's a little exploitative, especially when you're bragging about how you just made $200,000 last year from one gig. Like, clearly you have the money then, so why aren't you paying your staff? Then we have Curtis and Joey meeting together, and they go to shop for furniture for Joey's party. Joey doesn't actually buy anything, which is a classic reality TV setup. They like invent some fake reason to go somewhere and then like don't do the thing that they said they were going to do. Instead, they just sit there and kind of like get to know each other a little bit more. I get the impression that they were not really friends before the show either. And Curtis tells Joey that Dorian had said some negative things about him being an influencer.
I can't speak for Dorian, but he has a thing against influencers.
And I was really surprised by Curtis here, because Curtis, I think, maybe is a little bit more wise to the reality TV game than I thought. He's doing this thing called being the bone carrier. He's taking something that someone else said and bringing it back to the person that it was said about in order to strike a match and light the fire. And the role of a bone collector or a bone carrier is very important on a reality television show, because otherwise it's just all people talking shit about each other behind their backs and not having face-to-face confrontations, which is boring for the viewer to see. So congratulations, Curtis, for understanding that you are indeed on a reality TV show that is based on conflict. Joey predictably loses his shit when he hears that Dorian called him unemployed. He says, "I'm a workaholic. I love to work."
In businesses and working hard and having multiple brand deals per month. And all I can hear at this point is, you just take pictures for a living, you're just an influencer.
And again, standing in front of your ring light all day long, trying out skincare products, doing TikTok dances. Is that being a workaholic? I'm not sure. I don't think so. Then we get to the last 10 minutes of the premiere, which is Joey's engagement party. It does not look like the 40s or the 20s or anything. It just looks like his house with some candles and some tables and a bar. That's it. Like, there's no sort of like theming to it. He is not dressed in a theme. He is literally wearing like a sequined shirt and a blazer. I don't understand what the theme of this party is. I think the theme of the party was, we don't want to max out the budget, so let's just make it look like an event. Not any kind of specific event, just an event. So on their way there, Curtis tells Dorian that he told Joey what he had said about him being unemployed, and Dorian says, "You are messy as hell." And it's true, he is messy. But one of my favorite and most delusional moments from this episode is when Dorian is leaving his house and his security guard, his armed security guard, is there to escort him. And he says that he has to bring security everywhere with him because that's just the protocol in the life of a CEO.
It is protocol for a CEO like myself to bring security with him when he goes to a public appearance.
I don't think that the CEO of Glossier, Emily Weiss, I don't think that she's walking around with security, and her brand is like literally 10 times bigger than yours. So this is definitely a charade and a facade to project an air of importance and arrogance that is like a lot bigger than what his actual accomplishments are. And I love that because it's delusional. And I do hope that someone calls it out at some point, because this is what makes good reality TV, baby. And it turns out that Joey and Brad know each other because Joey was an intern. And I do wonder if that is like kind of the underlying psychology of why Joey is so desperate to like prove to everyone that he's this big star and this big influencer that has all this money and all this success, because he entered into this scene really working on the kind of like worker bee side of it rather than the creative side of it. He was like a stylist assistant, so that basically means he was like steaming clothes and running them to showrooms, and I wonder if that instilled in him a sense of inferiority. Something that is super interesting about Dorian as a character is that he has this really bad social anxiety that he starts talking about pretty much as soon as he gets to the party.
I have a little bit of social anxiety because of the pandemic. I was so social prior to.
He's very nervous to meet these other men, and I can kind of see and relate to the specific anxiety that he was having. Gay men can be very like catty and unfriendly and competitive with each other, especially when you meet in a scenario where it's like you're entering into a group of people that have their significant others there or have friends there and you don't know anyone. Dorian was showing up to this party with only Curtis as his friend, and Curtis knew everyone else and he kind of didn't. So I think that he felt a little bit on guard, and he was kind of like, I guess, comparing himself to the other people around him, though of course he would never say that because his life is so much better than everyone else's. And he does this thing that I have done before when I have felt like socially anxious. He goes over to a random table of people and can't stop talking. Like, he starts talking and they ask him like one question and he is like motor mouth going a mile a minute.
I think naturally, I probably wouldn't hang out with any of these people.
He does not know any of these three people that are at this table with him, and it turns out one of them is Joey's really good friend. And he kind of starts hinting at or suggesting that he wouldn't be the biggest fan of Joey because of what he does. And that was one of those great lightning in a bottle reality TV moments, because he had no idea there was a mole, an informant standing there at the table, and also he was nervous. So he was just kind of unloading and verbally saying like things that maybe if he had thought about it or wasn't in such kind of like a panic or a state of fight or flight, he wouldn't have said. But he did, in fact, kind of spill the beans about how he feels about Joey to one of his friends at his own house. So his friend Jen, who heard this stuff, reports it back to Joey, and then Joey decides that he wants to confront Dorian about this.
He said he liked you, but he also was like, I don't know if I get along with him.
I told you this at the store this week, and
Let's go talk to him.
And again, these two people are the two most delusional characters on the show, and they have the biggest egos and also the most to prove and the most insecurities that they project onto other people. Everyone else, even kind of Todrick on the show, seems a little bit more secure with themselves. Delusional, yes, but not in a way that is like very, very, very disconnected from reality. And these two, when they meet, it's like, I think they both really wanted to be the HBIC. They wanted to be the star of the show, and it was kind of like their first encounter to see who would win that role. And it is interesting because like Joey definitely has villain potential, but his first interaction with Dorian, he is the aggrieved party. So he is kind of the underdog here, I guess. If you're rooting for someone, you're rooting for the person who was unduly talked shit about, even though Joey is so annoying. And like, I would probably say the same things about him if I had to meet him. But Dorian and Joey do kind of get into it a little bit. And I think that Dorian starts out in good faith, being nice when Joey comes over to confront him.
I want to celebrate and just like, I don't want any of this tonight.
You know what? I'm here in support of you.
Exactly. So it is my house, so support me.
But the conversation just kind of quickly devolves and escalates, and they are both so defensive. I think Joey is defensive because, you know, when someone's being rude to you in your home that you don't know, that you already have heard has been saying mean things about you, I would also be a little bit pissed off about that. Dorian is also getting kind of like accosted in front of cameras and a lot of people in a situation that he already feels uncomfortable in, and it is a recipe for disaster. So they kind of get into it, and Dorian like instantly is like, I'll leave. No thanks, I'll leave. I don't want to be here.
Well,
I don't know you.
you're at my house though.
Okay, so I can go.
If you're gonna be rude, like there's no point to be rude.
Well, I'll go.
And I think that Joey is a little shook by that because he was expecting him to kind of engage in a little bit of tit for tat, but Dorian is not having it. Dorian wants to evacuate the dance floor. And that is where the first episode concludes. And like I said, there are some interesting delusional characters on the show, and I am kind of intrigued to see where it goes and to see how the storylines unfold. The teaser for the rest of the season didn't look that good to me. The drama does look very manufactured, and like there is kind of like a stiltedness to this first confrontation that they have, but a lot of reality shows don't even get to their first confrontation until like the season finale. So if there's one thing the gays can potentially do, it is like bring unnecessary drama and cattiness. So I'm hoping that we get to see that a little bit more and that we represent the gay community. I mean, that part of it aside, this is just like your regular, degular, trashy reality TV show full of people that are very unlikable but eminently watchable. So let me know what you guys thought if you watched it or if you're gonna give it a go. I'm so down to do more recaps of this TV show if you're interested in it. The second episode is already out, so let me know if you like this video and I will, you know, do a follow-up. And by the time you're watching it, the Patreon for my podcast, The Evolution of a Snake, which is a pop culture Taylor Swift podcast I host with my friend Madeline, is going to be launching so soon. It is patreon.com/Swiftologist. You can get 2 bonus episodes a month for $6, and we're so excited to see where this kind of journey takes us. I am also still on TikTok. That is my newest social media platform, and I will have everything linked down below so you can find me elsewhere until I see you again later this week. All right, goodbye, everyone.